Judah Krishnamurti. It's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Judah Krishnamurti.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Next Level.
Good vibes only.
Darren and Jessica Salquist with you today, and let's break down that short and sweet quote.
What does it mean to you when it says it's no measure of health to be adjusted or well adjusted to a profoundly sick society?
Well, I really think that it is basically saying it is not good. It is not good to be well adjusted. That it's a norm, that a sick society becomes our norm.
Becomes the norm, and that's what we're focusing on, is just fixing and maintaining people's illness, not actually going to the source.
Yeah.
Right? Attacking or giving pills or medication to treat what's going on versus like, let's see what's causing what's going on and let's make some adjustments there.
Yeah. Prevention is beautiful. I think that goes along with one of the quotes in your Eat, Move, Sleep workshop about the chronic disease. Can I share it?
Yeah. So that's some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. We, in January 1st, actually, sorry. The next workshop coming up February 1st, right, is going to be on Eat, Move, Sleep. We're going to be talking about the fundamentals. We talked about this on our last podcast that we are doing a 5-part series on Change Your Mind, Change Your Body at CoreFit. This is part of our CoreFit Wellness Academy, where you get to hire a nutritional coach, you have a mental performance coach, and then a personal trainer. And then you have this team of individuals that are behind you that are going to help you create change, and that change that is going to stick. I know a lot of us have been through the 8-week or 12-week kind of challenges and gone on the weight loss kick and definitely had some success with that. But typically what happens is they fall back on their old habits because they didn't learn any new habits. They just focused on the destination, right? The outcome, and then didn't really process or learn any of those things along the way. And then they typically we start to slip back into our old habits, right? We've even seen this on that TV show, The Biggest Loser, where all those individuals went through this period of time. They lost all this weight. They looked awesome. They put all that hard work into it. And then after about 1 year, a year and a half, they start gaining the weight back. They start slipping. They didn't have those individuals around them. And this is where our goal around the Change Your Mind, Change Your Body workshop is to share these tools and ideas that you get to decide on how you're going to implement them into your life and to create change. And that's what the CoreFit Wellness Academy is all about as well, right? Is having those coaches. And it's nice. What's different about this is when you go into a meeting, when you come into the gym, you know you're meeting with your personal trainer today. You're not going to meet with your personal trainer and then have a conversation as well around nutrition. This is where we can really focus on what today's activity is. The focus is working out. Then you're going to focus another session on when you meet with your nutritional coach. You're going to get that all dialed in. We are helping people go to the store and learn actually how to shop. Looking at ingredients is one of the things that we're definitely focusing on. And then you're working with that nutritional coach to create meals that you enjoy. And how do we make those meals healthy? And then you're going to have a one-on-one session with your mental performance coach, which will be myself or my brother Kurt, as we are certified through Heroic, the Public Benefit Corporation. And I'm also certified through Brian Cain, Mental Performance Mastery. And we go into these and we kind of just really get you dialed in to guide you down this process. We're not giving you the answers, right? Typically, most of us already know the answers, but it's going in and helping you sustain those, build that process to understand what the process is. We're not focused on the outcome. We're focused on the process. And so that's kind of the gist of this. So that's what we're going to be talking about today is workshop number 2, Eat, Move, and Sleep.
Yes. And there's a lot of information for Eat, Move, and Sleep. So we're going to give you some tips and tricks and snippets of parts of the workshop. But one of the stats that I wanted to share, as I was stating earlier, is that chronic disease, dis-ease, is a global pandemic, such as heart disease, diabetes, cancer. And this is stating every single year, those things are killing 50 million people.
Yeah.
And they state also that that's 2 times more deaths than what people die from infectious diseases.
Yeah.
And so if you think about it, 50 million people dying a year from chronic disease. And a lot of authors and researchers and people could really support the fact that the dis-ease, the chronic dis-ease, is from eating, from the food that we are ingesting. And when you and I talk and we listen to our, heroic and read our books and our audiobooks and have conversation, I think some of the most common uh, pieces of it is talking about what we are ingesting. And I really liked what you put in your workshop, that it's about not always what you're adding to your healthy eating habits. It's what you are actually deleting and what can you actually remove to create better health.
Yeah. I mean, the big piece of that, it's not about what you need to start eating. It's what you need to stop eating. I mean, I would say, again, the majority of us, we have those healthy meals now and then. And that's when people say, how are you healthy? Oh, I'm pretty healthy. I eat pretty healthy. But when we really break it down, a lot of times people don't really know what healthy eating is. They think it's okay really to throw ranch salad dressing on top of their salads at times. And they just use all these barbecue sauce that's loaded with sugar and this ketchup and everything else that we're adding into our foods, that all those things are just, again, they're man-made, right? That's all sugar. And when people go to like Primal Kitchen ketchup and they compare it to Heinz ketchup, like, oh, this sucks. This doesn't taste very good. Yeah, it's not the same.
There's no sugar in
There's
it.
no sugar
No
in it.
added
And,
sugar.
and that's the thing. You don't go into this when you start making changes to think when you start moving towards more of the healthier foods that have less ingredients is gonna taste the same as the foods that you're eating that are loaded with sugar.
Yeah.
And this is the big focus around the workshop is it's those ultra processed foods that we're eating. When we go to fast food, there's a reason why McDonald's hamburgers can sustain for so long with those hamburger buns and the meat and the French fries. These are all what we call like food-like substances. I wouldn't say they're really food, right? Because they're ingredients, they have a multitude of ingredients that are listed in there. When you just look at, if you go to the store and buy beef, what are you going to find in beef? You're going to eat steak and all these other things,
Most of the time.
eggs, right? The majority of the stuff
Still
when
processed
you're
meat.
in that area with, again, buying steak and everything else, right? It's beef. That's what when you buy pork, it's pork. When you buy eggs, it's eggs. When you buy vegetables, they're vegetables. They're not all these other ingredients that are listed with those. And this is the biggest thing that we're talking about is when you go and purchase your foods, is turn it to the ingredients label. Take a look on how many ingredients are in this packaged food that you are buying for yourself and for your family. And of course, buying it out of love, you're really working hard on providing a nutritious meals for your family. And a lot of times, sometimes we do some things out of convenience because everybody has a busy schedule. But how do we really break down and make time to actually create real food? And one of the things they talk about is like when you look at the ingredients, is if there's ingredients in there and then you don't even have that in your spice cabinet, then those are probably foods maybe we gotta steer away from.
Yeah.
The other thing they talk about, if your parents didn't eat that, so your great grandparents didn't eat that food, maybe that's something we should not be eating right now. And start eliminating those.
You want to be able to pronounce your food items.
Yeah.
Also. And I like, bring it back to some of the workshop content. You mentioned food, and the definition of food, right, is actually nutritious substance. I mean, if you look in the dictionary, look up the word food, and you'll see that it actually is talking about quality nutritious food that is providing nourishment for your body. And really, that, as Darren was talking about, that ultra processed food, that added sugar, and even the seed oils that we will talk about, that's not really qualified as actually the category of food. So think about that. Like, are you actually eating food or not? And then you talked about that nutrient dense food, prioritizing that whole food and eating the whole food, meaning like it is what it is, right? You're the meat, you're eating a vegetable, you're eating, good finished grass finished meat and wild caught salmon. And there's a difference in quality and a difference of the nutrients that you want to provide for your body, which is food. So you touched on the nutrient dense food, whole foods, and minimizing that processed foods with added sugar. And do you want to mention anything about seed oils? And then,
Again, to make this brief, again, the minimize your ultra processed foods. Again, look at those ingredients with added sugars. Look at those ingredients that have seed oils. I mean, that's the biggest thing with chips, right? You go to your chips, and Jessica's talked about chips many times on this podcast,
Just like you
as
and
I
your
talked about donuts. But if you looked at it's canola oil, it's vegetable oil, it's all these different types of oils
Yeah.
that are less expensive, and they're high in omega-3, omega-6s, which cause inflammation within our body. And this is where I know there's like that brand Boulder Chips. They use avocado oil. There's a couple other brands that are looking at that use avocado oil. And those are just a healthier fat. Is it a little bit more expensive? Yes. In the long run, it's not as expensive in the long run.
Yeah.
And this is because it's got to look at what it's doing to your body. We have adjusted our eating style since January. We're doing a kind of a carnivore / paleo. And just within the 3 weeks that we've been doing this, I'm down 8 pounds, almost 10. Inflammation is totally decreased within my body. I'm feeling more clear with my thoughts when we're out running and we're exercising. There's been a big shift in the way I feel. And one of the things that I haven't quite eliminated yet, but I'm definitely have decreased my consumption of beer, or not consumption, my drinking of beer. I think I've had 4 beers since the new year, and that's also made a difference. And I'm still working on that process of eliminating that. And the reason why is, again, it's all of this. It's really it all comes down to knowing your why. Why would you want to adjust the way you eat? Why would you want to adjust the way you move and sleep? And hopefully the goal is that you can live a long, healthy life. A lot of the clients that I work with are very well established. They have great jobs. They're making really good money in their maybe 30s, 40s, or 50s, except they're maybe 20, 30, 40 pounds overweight. And that's due to the foods that they're purchasing and the way that they're eating style. And so the goal to this is that you guys, everybody out there is working hard to have this long life and for retirement. But what is your retirement going to look like if we're carrying all this extra weight and we're going through this process? Again, we just had mentioned it. Nearly 50 million people die every year due to chronic disease, and that number's going up. And this is one of the things we're going to be talking about and making that shift, which Jessica just mentioned just a few minutes ago about some of the things that we can do to make that shift.
Yeah. I do, as far as like those healthy fats, I think that's such a huge difference for people too, because people think of like meat and fats as a negative. So I'm just really encouraging people to go out there and do your research, and if you're reading studies, make sure that they're peer reviewed, and also make sure that they're actually looking at quality meat and quality fats, because there is those kind of items that just don't have a lot of the quality. And I'm not going to name off any names, but with that being said, like Darren mentioned, mind, your mood, your sleep, your activity level, all of those things start to change when you're able to decrease that inflammation. And a lot of these chronic diseases are created by inflammatory responses. Yes, our body does need some inflammatory responses to heal, to protect, but sometimes they're just overrun in our bodies and we can feel it. And so when Darren's talking about that weight that we've actually seen on the scale from the first of the year, it is, I'm going to say primarily for me, it's inflammation.
Oh, me
I'm
too, for sure.
noticing that parts of my body are less inflamed, less tender pain or
Poochie.
soreness. I'm getting a little less poochy, but there's some areas that I'd like to be less poochy. But what I do want to point out though, is there's a lot of amazing options for people. And as Darren mentioned, we're doing a carnivore / paleo. If that works for you, awesome. But you are the actual only person that is going to know what's going to work for your body. And like Georgia Ede, as a book we have here with us today, and we're not going to go super deep into it. She just wants people, same concepts, no processed food, like those things like that, healthy food, find your style, find what works for you, and put in the work. Because like I said, you are the only one that's going to know what works for you. You know how your body feels. Get in tune with what you're putting in your body and how it's making you feel. Track it. See how it helps with your energy, helps with your sleep, tweak it and move things around, because we could all say all day long, hey, this is what works for me. But that's the whole point. This is what works for me. We're just encouraging you to put real food in your body and to find something that actually works for you, and learn more about yourself step by step. And when we talk about, a lot of people talk about carbs, they're like, carbs are good, carbs are bad. I think the really great point that Darren will be speaking about is that you match your carb intake with activity level and your health goals. What, for one, what's your activity level and what is your actual health goals? And then you match it to that. We eat the sweet potatoes on the weekend. We're training again for some long distance running. So we might up our carbs here and there, but high carbs are usually what we're sticking in our mouths when we're snacking. And what we also noticed, what we've been doing for the last 28 days, is we are snacking a lot less, snacking a lot less. And you're so much more aware of actually what you're putting in your body. So we're spending a lot of time on eat. Anything else you want to say about eat before we move into move?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing, what Jessica was talking about, Georgia E, is Change Your Diet, Change Your Mind is the book that she just wrote. So that's something you can definitely look into. And we're talking about, again, carnivore, paleo. We're just sharing what we're doing. I'm not saying this is what you guys need to do or anything like that. The biggest thing that you guys can do to create change in your life right now, again, is like what we first said. It's what you need to stop eating. That's the biggest thing. Look at the ingredients. Look at those things that are ultra processed, that are coming in boxes, coming in bags, and that have a plethora of ingredients, and start seeing if you can decrease, eliminate those. One of the things that we talked about was floors and ceilings. That's what I'm doing with my beer, is I have a floor and a ceiling where this is the minimum, this is the maximum I'm going to. I'm not going to have more than that. Right now I committed, I'm not drinking beer during my work week. So if I do have a beer, maybe it's a Friday, maybe it's a Saturday. And what I'm kind of really leaning into, even with my beer, what is leaning into my why. The why is I don't want to put alcohol in my body. Alcohol is a poison. There's a lot of research around this. And so those are the things that I'm looking into for me to know my why. And it's easy to think if we're going to go for a run, as we're training for a Ragnar coming up, that if we're going to go on a long run, the way I've been feeling, I don't want to change that feeling. So if I have that voice in my head that say, hey, you got to get a beer. That beer tastes really good right now with this meal. I think, well, am I running tomorrow? Because if I'm running tomorrow, I don't want to have a beer. I don't want to have that in my system. I don't want to make sure that I don't feel a certain way. And so that kind of helps me say, no, I'll have a beer on the days that I don't run, which is basically, there's one day that I would have a beer, which would be on Fridays. Going into that, looking at when you're eating whole foods, Jessica already talked about eating those fruits and vegetables, finding those higher quality proteins, and then looking at those healthy fats, olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, ghee, some nuts, some seeds. There's a lot of information about this that you guys are aware of, but just do your own research and see what works for you, and just get started. You don't have to go all in at once. It's simply start small, start eliminating certain foods that aren't benefiting you, and see what starts to happen, see the change. And then again, create your why. So those are the biggest things. And you're going to go on any type of carbs. Focus on those low glycemic options like leafy greens, the non-starchy vegetables, those slow digesting carbs. Those are the carbs that we really want to bring in for any type of movement. And also know that our bodies can also burn fat for energy. We don't necessarily need all those carbs. So just again, there's your way, there's my way, there's no the way.
That's right. Let's move on to movement.
Going into movement
benefits.
And so this is a big thing, coming from the gym, talking about movement. Obviously our members know about movement. Sometimes we don't think about it in this big way. And one way to think about it, if all of us out there, if we worked out 5 days a week, or maybe even 7 days a week, and you're filling out a survey, are you active, or do you exercise 7 days a week? How active are you? You check that box that you're active, because you're working out 1 hour every day. And the opposite of that is, I'd ask yourself to track, how often are you sitting? When you go to the gym, you're sitting in your vehicle driving to the gym, you work out, you get back in your vehicle, either drive home or you're driving to work. Those of us that have desk jobs, then you're sitting for 5, 6, 7 hours. Maybe you're getting up now and then, but you're sitting more than you're actually moving. So think about that 1 hour of your day, that's 4% of your day. And that's what we're going to be talking about on movement, is how do we bring in those opportunities to move? How do we find more movement? Setting timers on our watch, 20 every 20 or 30 minutes, if that works within your schedule. If not, create something that does work for you.
Yeah.
Those are some of the topics that we're going to be hitting on the movement side. Jess, what would you like to add into that?
Well, I definitely, I like the step by step. I think, during this workshop, I mean, you have really 10 great, wonderful kind of motivators and benefits. But I think for the podcast, let's pick out a few that we think are, most helpful for ourselves, and kind of share maybe why they're helpful for us, and why that would relate to us maybe a little more. Um, since there are 10, but I do absolutely think, we're showing up every day, and we're picking our why, as you mentioned earlier. And that compounding effect, as you noted, is really important. And I will just say, for me, that's probably my biggest challenge during the day. So during the day, I have a day job, desk job. And what is challenging for me is that it's a very high intense job that is there's lots of things coming at you all the time. There's about 85, 90 staff that are in my area, my region. And so it's really important for me to make sure I'm making the connections and being supportive and being there, and learning all the new things I need to learn, and doing all the other, parts of my job. And so, and the biggest purpose is protecting vulnerable populations, which don't want to forget that. So the challenge for me is that I get so focused, right? I don't have an issue with focus. I am so focused on the work that I'm doing and providing the support where the support's needed. I do forget about my movement, and I end up sitting in that chair for long periods of time. When I'm in the office, I have a sit to stand, much easier. When I'm at home working remotely, much harder. It's much more, it's more of a challenge for me. It's actually not hard, because I can very well stand up. I've tried the timer thing, turning the timer on. It goes off, and then I get distracted and I don't turn it back on. So that's something that I'm working on for commitment. And the part that stood out to me, and when we first talked about it, we were both like, that's interesting. If you think about movement and leadership, um, and be the example. I didn't connect with that until I started realizing, when one of my staff said, you really encourage me because you have multiple beverages in your hand every time we have a meeting, and you're drinking them. And it encouraged me to be more hydrated. And I thought, well, if staff are motivated by my hydration that I'm doing well in, which is celebration, then if I'm being very clear and apparent that I'm sitting, standing, making that effort, letting people know, we're on virtual calls all the time. You can't hide your needs anymore. You're going to have to stand, you're going to have to sit, you're going to have to, have the conversation while movement is occurring at the same time, cameras off, do some movement. So I also want to challenge myself for the same thing. If I can inspire someone to drink water and have hydration throughout the day, because that helps your energy, then I can absolutely be the example for that. And that helps me with my purpose more. This is, yes, about me, but it also helps that I want to help others in that light too, because I know most everyone that I'm talking to virtually all day is also sitting in their chair.
Yeah. And so, speaking of hydration, let's talk about Proud Source spring water. That's what we're drinking right now.
Yeah.
Again, naturally occurring minerals and electrolytes as this delicious beverage that we're drinking. And again, bringing in more water into your day, bringing in those minerals that we need. But what I would add in there for you, looking at number 4, self-discipline, show up daily, right? Discipline equals freedom. It's not about finding time to move. It's about making time. Self-discipline is the bridge between knowing you should move and actually doing it. Even on the busiest days, a 5-minute intentional movement can make a difference. And so those are the things I definitely have been giving Jessica little subtle hints during the day when I know she's working from home, and to ask her has she moved today, and start tracking her steps.
Did you move today?
And there's,
like, yeah,
there's
we're
a couple key things that I won't bring up right now, which I know that, if something's not done, then she hasn't been outside or she's been locked in. And then one thing I would talk to you about is the one subtle coaching tip is you said that you're so focused, right? You don't have a problem being focused. But this is where I would ask you to take a break then from your focus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? That 30 to 90 minute deep work time block is allowing yourself that moment to take a break from your focus and going outside, being in nature, Fortunately, Jess and I, we live in a beautiful place in Colbert and Green Bluff area. We got 10 acres that we can enjoy. We're surrounded by a forest. And so, and we have a dog that needs to get outside sometimes.
That's right.
And
I
so,
think of a dog.
maybe you are able to step back from it, but maybe like think about Tango. Maybe Tango needs to go out for a walk and not just go let him out, but
I
take him
will
out.
I will say that is how I've gotten outside before, because he'll like whine and I'll be like, oh, I need to take the
Yeah.
dog out.
Mm.
And I get to do that because it is actually super helpful. But the other part of it too is you're talking about focus and the awareness and being present in the movement. And we have to set ourselves up for success. And I haven't been so much doing that because of the fact that I'm getting ready for the day. Well, if I can get ready for the day and then have actually my shoes on, ready to go, have some warm lower, paint, lower extremity coverage on that's warm, have my jacket sitting there right by the door, just like we talk about, put your shoes and your workout gear next to your bed. So when you wake up, it's a no brainer. That's what you're doing. Get your everything ready every morning. When I go to the gym, I got all my stuff packed, ready to go. The only thing I make is the eggs in the morning, and then I'm good to go, and my coffee. But the same thing, if I'm going to go outside, even if it's for 3 minutes, a minute, get some fresh air, I need to have everything ready right there so I can literally take that 3 minutes and walk out the door and be refreshed.
Yeah.
It's going to
Yeah.
benefit everybody.
And another one of the top 10 things that just stand out is number 2 is the motivation and commitment. Know your why. We talked about this again around your food. Know why it's important to move. And what it says is why you move determines how you move. Whether you want more energy, whether you want to reduce stress or be better focused, understanding your why for movement keeps you consistent. Motivation gets you started, but commitment sustains you when the novelty wears off. And so this is the biggest thing is we'll check in with Jessica on our next podcast. The next 3, because we're going to fire off another one here in a moment on how she's doing with her movement. And the goal is to again, awesome job with your standing desk when you're in the office. But when you're at home is where definitely what needs work is that movement that's in the house. And again, knowing your why. And we'll check back in with you, Jess.
Oh, thanks. Help me be accountable.
Is there anything else you want to talk about in that movement side?
No, I think you got to move on to sleep and
all right,
wrap her up.
Sleep. Again, number 1 question is know your why. Why is it important to sleep? And these are things also working with clients that, I'm rocking my sleep. My sleep scores are really awesome, using that Aura ring. Then I asked them, are you hitting the top 10 things that are going to help you sleep best? And like, well, what do you mean? The biggest thing I always ask, are you consistent with your sleep time? Are you going to bed at the same time, and are you waking up at the same time? Because that's helps our bodies prepare when we're consistent around our bedtimes, right? We do this for our children when kids are young, right? We have that bedtime curfew to put them to sleep, and we know that they're going to be getting up by a certain time. And when they don't get that right amount of sleep, they can be a little cranky and a little ornery, right? And
That's
so
right.
can we as adults. And so that's one of the things that I always ask my members that I'm working with is, are you consistent around your bedtime?
Yeah.
And typically they're not.
That foundation of sleep, one of the things that I was looking at that stood out the most for me, I'm really trying to understand more about REM sleep and deep sleep and HRV and all those fun things to really understand how that shifts and how it changes and how that impacts me. And one thing that's really important to me is have good brain function and cognition and reducing my stress. And what I liked about that third sleep foundation that you talked about was that sleep enhances that emotional resilience and overall happiness. And so that part, Matthew Walker has a book, Why We Sleep.
Yeah.
And he talks about the REM sleep. So plays a critical role in processing emotions and reducing stress. It helps reset your emotional brain, making you more resilient to life's challenges. Chronic sleep deprivation can lead to heightening emotional instability and a greater risk of burnout. And if you've seen any of the movies that have like torture, right? They're like keeping them up all night,
They're
playing loud music.
Oh, you're going to go to sleep.
Yeah, you're going to sleep. Let me sleep.
Sleep for 20 hours.
And people are like going crazy because of overstimulation of music, bright lights blinking, and not being able to sleep. And that could literally make someone crazy. But I really rely on my sleep. I think that's something that Darren and I both know how much of a priority it is. I feel bad because my sleep is exceptionally better than Darren's. But what I love about the fact that Darren, I'm looking at my Aura ring and I'm like celebrating my crowns, and he's like, yeah, I got 75%, So I think though what is the greatest part about Darren working on that to get better is that he chipping away, right? We're changing what we're sleeping on. We're changing, the temperatures in the room. We're doing different things to try, different placements, sleeping on your back, using aromatherapy, using, creams, taking magnesium, like trying lots of different things till you find out what works for you.
Yeah. And the best way, again, whether it's an Aura ring or using your Garmin or maybe your Apple Watch, something that's tracking your sleep, what gets tracked gets improved.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only way. If you think, oh, I kind of feel good in the morning, you have no clue what your heart rate did. You don't know anything about your HRV. You don't know about your body temperature, your respiratory rate, all these things that the Aura ring tracks. And this is how I've been working on this year. And we're also doing this program with Heroic. It's called the Heroic Elite. And it's a 101-day program where you're focusing on one thing. What's one thing that you want to get dialed in? And so the one thing that I'm working on is my sleep, because we've talked about this before, that sleep is the foundation that all our pillars, the eating and the moving and our meditation, all these things rest upon. Without good sleep, it's really hard to show up as your energy best. It's at your work or in love, or, you're going to make poor choices around food. You're going to make poor choices around movement. And so that's been super important to me. As Jess has mentioned, I've been working on bringing my sleep number up. At times, my numbers were, if those of you that know I have an Aura ring, I had a 52 and a 54 for my sleep. There's times where I've gotten 4 hours and 5 hours of sleep due to sometimes things out of my control. No, I want to say out of my control, but everything's within my control of what I do. But time wise, staying up late because we went to an event, we went to the Banff Film Festival, or we had something going on. So yeah, it's looking at those things and not saying that you can't, not having a night that you stay up late or this or that, but it's the consistency. What I'm looking at is getting consistent sleep of 7+ hours. And right now I've been balancing out between 6 hours and 45 minutes and just a little over 7. So I'm creeping up on that goal. Today I had an 84. I missed it by 1 to hit that crown. And when you have an Aura ring, 85 is the crown. I got at my readiness. I hit 87. My exercise or my movement's always high. Mm-hmm. It's my sleep though that I'm really focused on. And so those things that I'm doing, I'm shutting down my phone an hour before bed. I have an alarm clock on my phone that goes off at 5:30 so I can stop eating. I start shutting down the lights. I'm putting on my blue blockers. I start prepping my morning, my breakfast. If I'm having coffee in the morning, I get that stuff ready. I get my gym clothes out. I get all my stuff out to give myself the best chance to give myself the best sleep. And then we're in bed typically around by 7:30 sometimes even. And I want lights out by 7:45. That's the goal, is lights out by 7:45. I typically wake up at 4 a.m. And so to get that sleep, those are things that I'm doing. So still working on it, but it's getting better, and that's how it gets better, right? By putting focus to it.
So I think as far as, we talk a lot about fundamentals, and I think that just shows how absolutely important it will be. We will continue to talk about these things because they are so important. I think just remember that everything we chatted about today is just very surfacey of all the things that we could talk about, and that your eating, your moving, and your sleeping helps with cognition, helps with happiness, helps with resilience, helps with impulse control, overreacting, emotional stability, motivation. I mean, there's just so many things. So pick your thing, pick your why, spend some time getting to know yourself a little better.
Yeah. And again, focusing on the fundamentals, just leaving here with these last couple of things. Again, those of you that maybe don't walk that much, start tracking your walking. Set a goal. If you're walking 3,000, 4,000 steps a day, can you bump it up by 500? And then the goal, they talk about the magic number. Again, there's still a lot of questions around this, is that 10,000 to 15,000 steps every day. Looking at that sleep, there's no question about this. The research is there, 7 to 8 hours of sleep, 9 if possible. And I'm hearing now the new studies are saying women need more sleep than men. So that might be something that we're going to dive into a little bit more. And then nutrition. If you can, stop eating 2 to 4 hours before you go to bed. And then also think about what's that one food that you might be eating that you can eliminate and start moving yourself towards that healthier version of you.
That's right. So as we're wrapping up, follow us on Facebook, Instagram at Next Level Wellness, at Darren Salquist, at Reflexology Jedi. And you will find us, see what we're doing, see some really amazing homemade recipes that are really healthy. And thanks for joining us at Next Level.
Good vibes only. Peace.